Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the Observer's chief leader writer Sonia Sodha and the Home Affairs editor for The Times, Matt Dathan. Welcome and great to see both of you. Front pages then, let's kick off, shall we, with the eye. It leads with the Cabinet Office referring the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson to the police over new allegations that he broke COVID rules. He continues to deny any wrongdoing. The Express describes those claims against Mr Johnson as a stitch-up. The Mail suggests he intends to sue the Cabinet Office over the matter. It's also the lead story for The Guardian. Up the top there, Johnson referred to the police over new claims of COVID rule breach. Meantime, the Metro reports on the death of the disgraced entertainer Rolf Harris. The paper says that, in fact, it happened 2 weeks ago, after which he was cremated. The South Wales Echo has the simple headline, Tragedy and Riot, reacting to unrest in Cardiff last night in response to the death of 2 teenagers in which police insist they had no involvement. The Financial Times carries comments from the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey, who says the regulator has very big lessons to learn over how it has dealt with inflation. And the Daily Star is somewhat bemused by the comedian Bob Mortimer's admission on a podcast that he'd like to die in a fight with a bear. Well, a reminder, don't forget to scan the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, and you can check out the front pages of the papers while you watch us. So let's head to our guests then, Sonia Sodha and Matt Dathan. Matt, you kick us off then on Boris Johnson leading a number of newspapers, dobbed in by the Cabinet Office in what his spokesperson has called yet another politically motivated stitch-up, which makes the front of the Express.
Yes, that's right. The Times' Henry Zeffman broke the story early this evening about 6 p.m. that as part of the Cabinet Office's preparations for the public inquiry into the Partygate scandal, the wider COVID inquiry, which will also include allegations of the Partygate scandal, they came across diary entries which appear to have shown possible breaches of Boris Johnson of lockdown restrictions, not only at number 10, but also at his Chequers country house in Buckinghamshire. And they passed these allegations on to 2 police forces, obviously the Metropolitan Police, which covers Downing Street, but also Thames Valley Police. So it raises yet more questions about the former Prime Minister's conduct while in office.
Absolutely. He's come out fighting, though, hasn't he, saying the allegations are totally untrue. Lawyers have examined the events in question and advised that they were lawful. And his supporting MP, Tory MP Ben Bradley, to our correspondent, hearing this now for the first time, frankly, former PM's been through that. The world has moved on. Do you agree, Sonia?
No, I don't. And I mean, I think it's a case of he would say that, wouldn't he? He's always consistently denied wrongdoing in relation to parties and breaking the regulations, COVID regulations and the law in Downing Street. And now this is to do with Chequers. And, he denied it in relation to Downing Street. And, there have been a number of fines issued in relation to Downing Street. And it's been found by the police that Boris Johnson broke his own regulations. So this idea that we're somehow to take him at his word and he says there's nothing to it, I'm afraid his credibility for truthfulness with the public is completely and utterly shot.
But the point is, Sonia, he's not in power anymore, so why waste money on it, effectively?
Well, because he was our Prime Minister during a national crisis. And I'm afraid, there's other people who are alleged to have broken the law 2 or 3 years ago. The police will still investigate them and determine if they should be charged and if there's a case to answer. The fact that he's not Prime Minister anymore doesn't change the fact of whether he's broken the regulations or not. These are very important new revelations and allegations about a former Prime Minister's conduct while he was in power, and they absolutely must be investigated, and we should know the truth on this.
Well, the Daily Mail picking up on the fact that the ex-PM is livid, as they put it, as civil servants calling the police over his lockdown diaries that you pointed out, Matt. Boris threatens to sue the Cabinet Office for this COVID stitch-up. I mean, you couldn't make it up now, could you?
No, I'm not sure how successful suing the Cabinet Office for doing its duty of informing the police will go down, but I guess it's just a sort of a threat at this stage. It sounds like he's suing over the specific decision by the Cabinet Office to refer the allegations to the Privileges Committee, which is expected next month to rule on whether Boris Johnson recklessly or deliberately misled Parliament, which obviously could have massive ramifications for his future, because if it recommends a suspension of at least 10 days, then he could be booted out as an MP.
Yes, Johnson referred to police by the Cabinet Office. Lawyers became concerned by details in Johnson's diary. He blames the abbreviated entries in it. I mean, we're poring over the details of this once again, aren't we? But it's now 2 police forces looking into it in 2 different localities with different allegations about who came and went, effectively. So where do you see this goes? Because we're still waiting for the committee of MPs to report on this, aren't we, Sonia?
Absolutely, and it sounds like we might have to wait for another police investigation now. And of course, the irony of this is that it was lawyers who spotted these entries in the Prime Minister's diaries, I think it was. These are lawyers that are paid for by the state, by the taxpayer, in order to help him prepare his testimony for the independent COVID inquiry, as Matt was saying. So these are lawyers paid for by the taxpayer. They found these entries. They were concerned about it. They had a professional duty to report it to the Cabinet Office. Cabinet Office officials felt that they were obliged under the Civil Service Code to make onward referrals to the police. So there is an irony in all this, which is that, you know, the defence that the taxpayer is paying for Boris Johnson to have for the inquiry. And, you know, it's a very expensive defence, but I think, you know, most people would probably think, well, you know, fine, if you need some support in preparing his testimony for the inquiry, that's okay. But it's actually that taxpayer-funded support with his defence, the COVID inquiry, that has led to these new revelations coming out.
Yes, and the dates are extraordinary as well, aren't they? Potential lockdown breaches between June 2020, i.e. the first lockdown, right through to May 2021. Thames Valley Police confirming they're considering the evidence of breaches at Chequers. Boris Johnson and his wife Carrie, who are expecting their 3rd child, The Guardian tells us, and his 8th, reportedly stayed there during the first lockdown when rules forced people to stay at home and explicitly barred them from mixing with other households. Bit of a bigger garden, Matt, at Chequers, one would imagine, than Downing Street, even though that's got quite a nice a green lawn on it. You know, one wonders whether Johnson will decide that it's worth hanging on, fighting on, what his chances are of a political comeback, or whether he will become the, I think, 38th Tory MP who decide they won't stand at the next election. Who knows?
Yeah, that's right. 38. Well, that's a lot of MPs already. I think there's already sort of suggestions that he might decide that his future is better served outside of the sort of the psychodrama of Westminster, given he's earned more than £5 million since leaving office in September. He wouldn't have to declare that anymore. He could go and enjoy his new life in the Oxfordshire countryside, where he's just bought a new house with his new family, his extended family, expecting another baby, obviously. But there's also the suggestions that he still covets a return, and were Rishi Sunak to lose the election, be booted out as leader. Perhaps Boris Johnson, given that he's the most successful Tory leader of recent times, could come back and resuscitate the party in opposition and deliver it to some miraculous victory. But I think these new allegations, these new revelations, first revealed by the Times, really shines a spotlight on that 2 years or so of his governance, where he was breaking lockdown rules here, there and everywhere.
Yes, and the revelations, The Guardian continues, came to light only because Rishi Sunak's government agreed to foot Johnson's legal bills for the COVID inquiry. Lots of criticism about that, not least from the Labour Party. I think it was Bridget Phillipson who was saying, why are we still paying for Boris Johnson's legal bills? The Mirror, equally critical, Sonia, with the final thought there. Cops pro-Boris again, as they put it.
Well, I can really see their point, because some people might say, well, it's just, it's an inquiry about what happened during the pandemic and what decisions are made and why. And surely a former prime minister, you know, all they need to do is sort of turn up and say the truth and be really honest and upfront. And obviously we know that that is something that Boris Johnson does not have the best track record for, presenting information straightforwardly. There's been lots of circumstances where he's been extremely misleading about the impact of his policies, for example. But, you know, I guess the fact of the matter is that with these inquiries, particularly when you've got kind of high-profile people and inquiries maybe making rulings about liability and blame, etc., a lot of them you would expect someone to perhaps have some legal representation at. So I'm kind of relaxed about that aspect of it, as long as the taxpayer isn't spending too much on it. But it's kind of, as I was saying before, which is that the irony of it is it's the fact that Boris Johnson clearly must have wanted this legal representation. The government have paid for it, but it's the fact of that legal representation that has led to these revelations, and probably a whole new police investigation, as we're hearing tonight, coming out into the actions and behaviour of the Prime Minister during the pandemic, answering this question of, is there more evidence that it wasn't just in Downing Street, that in Chequers as well, he did not abide by the rules that his government set, that he expected everyone else to abide by at great cost to themselves.
OK, we'll see what comes of that. No doubt we'll get more reaction as well. In the meantime, let's move to the Financial Times, Matt, if you don't mind. And the Governor of the Bank of England suggesting that there had been, or there will be, some very big lessons to learn in how they set monetary policy after the central bank failed to forecast persistently high inflation. High inflation that the IMF said today could linger, despite perhaps slightly rosier forecasts for the UK economy.
Yeah, that's right. It's quite an admission by the governor today that basically they've consistently underestimated the impact of this relentlessly high inflation that we've been seeing. And I think, but by the end of the year, they had previously predicted inflation would come down to back towards sort of 3-4%, and it's still at 10.1%, I think, at the last count. So it's an extraordinary admission by Bank of England that it really needs to update its modelling. It has obviously real life consequences. We all pay a lot of bills according to inflation. So if we're planning future bills that are based on that, then we're going to be budgeting for lower bills if the Bank of England is going to be predicting that. So it's quite eye-opener that at the Treasury Committee today.
Yes, and new figures are expected out tomorrow, I think, aren't they, Sonia, to show a large fall in inflation for April as energy price rises from last year fall out of the annual calculation. Doesn't make life feel cheaper for us, sadly, does it, even if the figures come down. But Andrew Bailey suggesting that inflation was likely to fall more gradually, 10.1% in March, to the Bank of England's 2% target than the bank's model predicts. So, a slow drawl out, and food inflation absolutely pummeling people still at home.
No, that's right. Food inflation is still really high. And I think one of the poorly understood things about inflation mathematically is if you've had inflation, running at 10% for a few months or for a year, those price rises are baked in. And then if inflation is sort of 3 or 4% on top of that, it just means that prices go up by 3 or 4%, but it's on top of the 10% that you've already had. It's only if you have deflation that prices fall. So prices are unlikely to get back to where they were, before inflation kind of spiked at these very historically high levels, or at least high levels in recent history. And that makes life really difficult for people because people are not seeing those increases in their pay packets, in wages. So it means that their real wages are falling. And so that hardship, as it were, is baked in. So it is a relief that the forecasts are that inflation will be coming down, albeit more slowly than was initially forecast. But that doesn't get rid of the ill effect of the inflation that we've seen already.
Yes, and the Times just handed to me. I'm not sure we've got it as a graphic yet. This is no time to cut taxes, the IMF urging Jeremy Hunt, suggesting that, of course, it's attractive to look into ways in which the tax burden is lighter. This is the IMF's managing director, but only when it's affordable. And at this point of time, neither is it affordable nor is it desirable. That's her message to the Chancellor anyway, because, of course, we know that many on the Tory right would like to see taxes lower, would they not?